Today is November 19th, 2024. This is episode 66 of the In a Nutshell podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and as usual, I'm joined by Joe Meade. Today, Joe and I will go over the weekend in the Big Ten in basketball. We had a ton of games Friday, we had a ton of games Saturday, and even a couple on Sunday and Monday so far. But Joe, a ton of interesting games that we've got to get to here. And we're not even at Feast Week yet. We're going to start off with your Michigan Wolverines. They hosted the TCU Horned Frogs on Friday early evening, and they got the job done. Joe, it was a good performance, 76-64. Michigan was victorious. And Joe, this game sort of went kind of exactly how we thought it would. Michigan was in front by 6-12 for a majority of the game. Certainly not comfortable, but they were in control, and they ended up holding TCU off. But all things considered, a pretty good performance from your Wolverines.
Yeah, this is the exact kind of bounce back you would need after suffering such a frustrating loss at the hands of Wake Forest on the road there. So I want to examine a few things for Michigan. Let's start off the top with the good. Nimari Burnett, 16 points on 7 shots. And Nimari Burnett, as we know, he's not a scorer. He hasn't been the main guy since high school when he was a 5-star recruit. And I think Nimari's accepted this role now. I think a lot of the problems he had last year was trying to do too much on a team that won 8 games. This year, he's a very good role player, and I say that in the best way possible. This team's ridden the coattails of Danny Wolf for 3 of their 4 games so far. They do have Vlad Goldens, who's taken a while to get on. More on that later. But they also have Ronnie Gale Jr., who could score a lot as well, and Trey Donaldson. All that said, it leaves guys like Nimari Burnett open. And in this game, 6 of 7, 3 of 4 from 3, 16 points. Trey Donaldson has done a masterful job rebounding, assisting. He's the do-it-all guy, and Michigan fans are quickly starting to love this guy. Outside of Trey Donaldson, you have to love the efficiency off the bench. Although it was only 16 bench points, there were 6 guys who got in and played significant time off the bench, whether it was Reuben Jones all the way down to Scottie Pippen's son, Justin Pippen, who dished in 2 assists and played great defense. All that said, Sean, this Michigan team could beat you in a lot of different ways. And although you look at the score sheet and you feel pretty good, the one glaring black mark on this team and the black hole that's really gotten them in trouble, and it's ultimately what lost to the Wake Forest game. Turnovers, even tonight against Miami of Ohio, continue to be a massive issue.
Yeah, 21 against TCU. That's a lot.
Yeah. About 16 in the first half, I believe. There was a stretch where Michigan was up 7-0. They turned the ball over 5 times and allowed TCU to get back to tie the game at 7 in a matter of 95 seconds because of the turnovers. That's something Michigan's going to have to change. It's something under John Beilein, Michigan would be the lowest in the country, and so definitely a long haul from that. I do want to highlight Danny Wolf. Although I criticized him a lot for turning the ball over, he did a great job in this game. 14 points, 10 rebounds, and he frankly saved Vlad Golden, who so far has been taking a while to acclimate himself to this new team. He's still efficient, but there's been times where he's been passive, passing up some easy dunks for layups that he's missed. Outside of that, though, Sean, this Michigan team could beat you in a lot of different ways, and if they figure out the turnover issue, it's hard to think that they won't be back in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, a lot of things. Now, obviously, we both watched this entire game, but a lot of the things in the box score do really point out as positives. You out-rebound them 41-29. You did turn them over 12 times, too. You didn't. The TCU was 15 of 22. Michigan was 15 of 23 on free throws, so pretty much a wash there. But to hold them to just 34% is big for the Michigan defense, something that wasn't necessarily supposed to be a strength coming in. But, Joe, the biggest positive that I'll see is the rebounding from the forwards. We talked about it not being enough. 22 between Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. That's what we were asking for, more rebounds. Gale and Burnett also added in with 6 each. That's a lot of rebounds. Now, I know they missed a lot of shots, but still, you need that sort of team effort rebound in the basketball if you're not going to have your center or your power forward eating everything up. So, good job there by Michigan. It's still very balanced. You still don't really have a go-to guy. I think Dusty wants that to be Danny Wolf, but at this point, I don't think it will be. And the question that I want to ask you, Joe, is, and I think I know the answer, is Michigan better when Danny Wolf is at the 5 and either Will Cheddar or Sam Walters is at the 4? I think against the right opponent, it's definitely a yes.
I think with that clarification against the right opponent, it is. I do think Vlad Golden has proven at FAU against high level competition that he can be that guy. The fact that we haven't seen it yet is a little disappointing, but I do think in time that will come. Sean, one quick note before we do move on, because we have a lot to get to. As of now, I'm reading this on FanDuel. Michigan is the second best odds to win the Big Ten at plus 750, only behind Purdue, and are minus 220 to make the NCAA tournament. Pretty interesting for a team that's only had one somewhat significant victory.
Yeah, and you do have an MTE, Joe. This Fort Myers tip-off is that 8 teams? Do you know, or is it 4? I think it's
It's
4.
four. It's the Michigan will play Virginia Tech in the opening game, and then depending on what happens, they'll play one of Xavier or South Carolina.
Okay, so Xavier would be a good win. South Carolina, maybe not, but you get some opportunities there, and you have Arkansas, Oklahoma, Western Kentucky, who's been good. Like, there's certainly some games where you can put yourself in a good position. Um, but yeah, the one worry would be Vlad Golden. It's not as if he's a freshman. He's played a lot of college basketball games, and I think they'll give him a couple more chances. But by the time that first Big Ten game rolls around, actually, you only have 3 games until then. December 3rd against Wisconsin on the road. If he's not working in that, I think you might see somebody else, or a lot more Will Cheddar and Sam Walters. I just think it looks a lot better on the floor when they're at the 4. And Danny Wolf is at the 5, dragging out the opposing big. But that is the main question that we're going to have moving forward about Michigan. Now, Joe, we have a lot to get to, so I'm not going to spend more time on it. TCU's not good. You had to look better than them here, and you did, and you won convincingly. But TCU's going to get eaten alive in the Big 12 this year. That conference is pretty good. All right, we'll go later in the day, Joe. This one was the big one. Alabama on the road at Mackey Arena, and Purdue gets a huge victory. The crowd was alive. The offense was alive, scoring 87 points. And at least for now, it looks like Trey Kaufman-Renn is going to be the 5. That is extremely good news for Purdue. He puts in 26 and 8 in 30 minutes. Braden Smith does struggle from the field, 6 for 18, but he has 10 assists to 0 turnovers, which is 1 turnover, which is an incredible stat. Lawyer gets in on the scoring with 17, and then freshman C.J. Cox off the bench with kind of a solo 9-0 run there with some 3 balls. Purdue looked pretty good against what many people consider to be the best team in the country.
Yeah, Sean, I think they did a great job putting pressure on Alabama, taking the lead. I thought Fletcher, Lawyer, and Wren, the fact 2 of those guys were clicking, particularly Foster Lawyer, 3 of 5 from 3. When that happens, really good things happen, especially when Braden Smith's even having an average night for him, which on Friday was about 17 points, I believe. Very good bench production as well from Purdue. They threw a lot of different looks at Alabama. I thought Painter did a masterful job, and frankly, I think he outcoached Nate Oates in this game.
Big
time. And I think you could attribute a little luck. In fact, Mark Sears was 1 of 6 for 1 of 4 from 3, only making 1 of those. Alabama, although as a team shot over 30%, they were not the same Alabama from 3. I thought a lot of those were lucky, a lot of those were rushed, and frankly, a lot of them were not shot with a lot of confidence. So if you're Purdue, I think you winning the Big Ten, if you had to look at this without an overreaction, as of right now, if you think winning the Big Ten is a crazy goal, I don't think it is at all. And frankly, the team I picked, UCLA's, looked a lot more suspect than Purdue. Indiana hasn't looked perfect. I'm sure we're going to talk about that later. Right now, it's hard to say that Purdue's not the most impressive team in the conference, even in spite of those poor bye-game performances.
Yeah, and I've watched every Purdue game this year, Joe, and I think you've watched most of them. This was definitely a good performance and a good outcome. They're not as good as last year. They still could win the Big Ten by being the 11th best team in the country versus the second team last year. They still could win the Big Ten like that. I don't know if this sort of performance is consistent. I tend to think at home it might be. I mean, they might not lose at home again. And really, that's not that surprising considering pretty much every team other than Rutgers has had trouble going in there in the past. Rutgers has actually won their last 2 games there, which is pretty crazy. But that crowd, we seriously underplayed it. I think everybody did. and they're going to give that crowd something to root for. So I would think that basically any team in the country will be underdogs if they play them at Mackey Arena. I do think Kaufman ran at the 5 is really big. Will Berg, that experiment was quick. He got 2 fouls early on, and we didn't see him much. You had Kim Heide, who struggled, have 5 points and 8 rebounds. You had Caleb Furst getting in there with 6 points. Miles Colvin. That's sort of what we've been asking Purdue to do, rather than to throw Kaufman ran at the 4 and it to look kind of clogged up. But, Joe, it doesn't get much easier from them. Tomorrow they go to the Pfizer Forum to play Marquette on the road, who just beat a Big Ten team on Saturday, we'll talk about later. So it does not get easier for Purdue. But, man, this is as good as it gets for a win in college basketball so far. And I'm not I'm going to probably wait until after Feast Week to do a bracketology, but the non-conference Purdue Boilermakers have not lost for a couple years now, Joe. But anything you want to add on Purdue before we move on?
No, Sean, I think life's good as a Boilermaker fan, especially if you only care about basketball, which is most of them at this stage.
Yeah. Up next, Joe, was one that probably went a little bit under the radar. Virginia Tech against Penn State at the Hall of Fame series in Baltimore. Penn State cruises. And Virginia Tech isn't, a great team by any means, but this Penn State team is scoring the rock so far. 108, 103, 92, and 86 points in their 4 games. Zach Hicks continues to shoot it like crazy. Ace Baldwin with a double-double, 19 and 10. You have to say, Joe, Penn State is looking a lot better than anybody thought.
Sean, Penn State so far is my most improved team, especially when you look at the totality of it. Ace Baldwin Jr., Zach Hicks, Kern Jr., all guys that were transfers last year, 2 from VCU, and Hicks from Temple, I believe.
Yeah.
Or is that? Yep.
But he was there last year, but he came from Temple.
Yeah. And then you also throw in Puff Johnson into the mix. I know he didn't play all that much, but scoring 9 as well. This is really impressive. This has been a really impressive coaching job by Mike Rhodes. A team last year that struggled to score at all is scoring like absurd amounts of points. I don't want to overreact too much and completely raise the ceiling on this team. I think that would be unfair to the team and to Mike Rhodes. But so far, nothing but a tip of the cap. I do wonder how good Virginia Tech really is, but
they beat him by 22. They beat him by 22 on a neutral floor.
Yeah, that's the thing. So if you're Penn State, you look at the rest of this schedule, certainly not too many great opportunities. I do think you can get rolling into Big Ten play, although the 2 games you play are really tough. So maybe if you're Penn State, just keep building up confidence before then, and we could revisit this discussion. But so far, nothing but glowing marks for Mike Rhodes and company.
Yeah, one more thing. We thought their starting lineup would be okay. It turns out that Kern and Dunn are not starting, and Yannick and DeLeon are starting. And DeLeon didn't do much at Tennessee last year. He wasn't expected to do much, and Yannick didn't do much either. 19 minutes per game at Northern Illinois last year, 7 points. He's made a jump. And the fact that they're extending that team so that Kern and Dunn can come off the bench, we thought they had a solid 5. I think they have a solid 7 or 8, Joe, which can get you a couple of victories and can get you maybe into this middle of the pack. They probably do need to expand a little more depth-wise to get to tournament range, but surprising so far. And I think they've gone kind of under the cracks because they've blown out a couple of better bye games by a lot, and then this one obviously wasn't close either. But so far, so good for Mike Rhodes. All right, up next, Marquette on the road at Maryland in College Park. Now, this game could have gone either way. The Terrapins lead by 4 at halftime, but 48 points from the Golden Eagles in the second half gives Marquette the victory. Cam Jones with 28 for Marquette, while Derek Queen and Jacoby Gillespie add 24 each for Maryland. Other than that, it was a struggle. But, Joe, a huge missed opportunity here for Kevin Willard.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the 2 missed free throws at the end all you want. I do think Cam Jones scoring 18 points in the second half also played a factor. Something that I think is pretty uncharacteristic of Kevin Willard and his teams, to let one guy completely destroy you. Although we've seen plenty of that when he was at Seton Hall, where Miles Powell for Kevin Willard's team would single-handedly dismantle teams within 2 minutes. Sean, one thing I want to highlight, Julian Reese, clearly not enough. 3 shots. He's got to do more than that as probably the leader of this team. Although Gillespie tapped in 27, I think Marquette would have taken that deal.
Yeah, for sure.
And shot, I think this is a huge missed opportunity, but I don't think Maryland should come away from this game too discouraged. I do think Marquette is probably the second or third best team in the Big East, outside of UConn and a very impressive St. John so far. So if you're Maryland, definitely a bummer because they've been historically very good at home. I think their schedule is very workable the next few games, and frankly, up to their game at Purdue, outside of some MTEs, you have Canisius, Villanova, Bucknell, Alcorn State, home against Ohio State. I think Maryland's capable of winning all those games, especially if they have a performance like this, and if it doesn't have to come down to free throws and having that terrible spurt where they had to be down 8 to 10 in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was a missed opportunity again. This Marquette team, all five of their starters are returning players. So you're not going to get sort of a like this is what they're going to be, Marquette. They're probably not going to get a whole lot better over the course of the season. They're going to be a really good team, but you had a really good opportunity. And Joe, I think the discussion about whether Derek Queen and Reese can both be on the floor, I think it needs to happen. Um, Reese kind of is just occupying space when Queen is trying to score, and sort of the other way around. Queen can shoot it a little bit, but I think I think that I think that conversation might need to start here soon. Just I think it may have cost them this game. Gillespie is really good. Queen is really good, like we thought. Reese can be really good, and then Harris Smith and Miguel also adding 9. But I think depth might be an issue for Maryland here, and it's unfortunate that we're sort of figuring that out just 4 games in. But Joe, I think that Empire Classic is a 4-team MTE, so they'll have another game that Monday, and you would think that they'd get past Villanova. Villanova stinks. That's going to be a
Yeah,
bad, bad loss if they drop that.
they're the Michigan football of college
Oh, I
basketball. We'll
mean,
talk about that later.
Villanova didn't win the title last year, though, Joe. They were bad last year, and they're
Yeah.
worse this year. But let's hope Maryland can get the W there. And Marquette is really good, like you said. It's just unfortunate because it's a missed opportunity. All right, we had 2 games, Joe, with teams in the Big Ten that were way too close for comfort. Friday night, Northwestern needs overtime to beat Eastern Illinois. 2 other Big Ten teams have beaten that Eastern Illinois team by 30. And then yesterday, Saturday, Minnesota actually sort of stole one from Yale, where they were down the entire game, and Dawson Garcia puts the team on his back to win it. But I think both of these teams have a lot of questions that need to be answered soon before Big Ten play.
Yeah, Sean, your boy Jalen Leach really saved Northwestern's rear end this time because, frankly, Sean, Northwestern had no business winning this game, and this is a kind of quad 4 loss that immediately inhibits you come Selection Sunday if they had even gotten that far. So, Northwestern, you breathe a big sigh of relief, and same with Minnesota. Although Yale made the tournament last year, me and Sean were talking off the air. You lost Danny Wolf. You also lost what's the
Matt
name escaped?
Matt Noling to USC.
Yes, you lose Matt Noling. This isn't the same Yale team from last year. Minnesota, uh, frankly, had a few calls go their way, and Dawson Garcia saved their rear end as well. So, uh, definitely need more from those 2 teams. There's a reason Northwestern might have been projected. We completely disagree with it. We disagreed with it at the beginning of the season. What I've seen so far, I'm still going to stick with it just because I think overreacting to a few games with as good a coach as Chris Collins is pretty ridiculous. In terms of Minnesota, I picked them in the basement cellar, and nothing much is going to make me change that opinion as of right now.
Yeah, and still remember with Northwestern, we haven't seen Brooks Barnheiser yet, and I haven't heard anything really. I don't think it's a very long-term injury. Hopefully for them, they can get him back by maybe at least Big Ten play. Iowa at the beginning of December. They do have the Arizona tip-off where they face Butler, but um, Eastern Illinois goes 3 for 19 from 3, and they get this game to overtime. That's an incredibly bad performance. Luckily, you get away with it in overtime. You can get that margin of victory up to 9 for the analytics, but this was a major, major alarm bells for Northwestern. And Minnesota flat out stole that one. They were outplayed and losing that entire game. And, it's a 3-point win over a top 125 team. Not the end of the world there. All right, Joe, we've got two more big games here on Saturday, but wanted to also talk about Iowa. They did beat Washington State in a neutral game in Moline. This one was pretty close the entire way until Iowa pulled away late. Owen Freeman, 21 and 11. Peyton Sanford with 18, despite shooting 2 of 10 from 3. It looks like for now that the Iowa that we thought we'd see is what we're getting here. A team that, if they make shots, can beat anybody and defensively might be a little vulnerable.
Yeah, Sean, it's I mean, I think you described that perfectly. I do want to point out that Peyton Sanford 2 of 10 from three is not going to be something you see very often. I think you're going to see more of 3 of 7 from three come conference play, which is a lot more efficient. Luckily, Owen Freeman was extremely efficient with those 21 points, as Sean mentioned. I thought their bench contributed just enough. Frankly, I think this game in Moline helped them, which for as if you guys didn't listen last week, Moline is practically Iowa. It's West Illinois, so good on Iowa to have that home crowd and to get a neutral victory out of it. I do think Washington State's an interesting team. I don't know what to make of them thus far, but perhaps this ages well, perhaps it doesn't. The big thing is, though, for Iowa, you survived a game where Peyton Sanford shot 20% from three, something that's not going to happen very often. I can guarantee that.
All right, we got two more games that we want to talk about on Friday, Joe, but let's leave one of them for last because that team is in a dogfight with UT Rio Grande Valley right now. Mm-hmm. So, Wisconsin, hold on. Ohio State goes on the road to Texas A&M, Buzz Williams, and the Buckeyes offense that we've seen for the first two games of the year did not show up. Just 64 points, 20 of 59 shooting, and the Aggies end up winning this one pretty convincingly. As good as that Texas performance was, Joe, a lot of alarm bells coming from this performance when you face a decent defense. This game was pretty much over early in the second half, and Texas A&M cruised to a victory.
Yeah, Sean, I think this is what we're going to see a lot of from Ohio State this year. I think when their offense is clicking, there are very few teams in the conference that can match them, and that includes Purdue, to be quite honest with you, and even Indiana. When Bruce Thornton scores over 20 points, and he has one of his other compatriots, whether that's Micah Parrish, Michi Johnson, even John Mobley Jr., who, even in a loss, looked very impressive, and he's going to be a problem in this conference should he decide to stay for years to come. Other than that, though, Sean, when Bruce Thornton only has 6 field goal attempts, I know he got to the line a fair amount. That's a huge issue. He needs to be taking at least 12 to 13 shots a game, and he got half of that, unfortunately. Micah Parrish, they were more than happy to let him beat down because he was 0 of 6 from 3. And Aaron Bradshaw, Sean Stewart, I think those are two very good players, but they did not do much of anything in this game. Bad shot selection. Frankly, didn't even move toward the ball that much from what I understood. And then Devin Royal and the bench, outside of John Mobley Jr., the bench needs to give the Buckeyes a lot more, especially on the road. I'm not going to begrudge them too much because they did beat a very good Texas team at a neutral site, so certainly this loss won't do much to hurt them. I mean, this loss isn't hurting them at all, I'll be very honest. It's just more the performance I'm disappointed in, but I do think Diebler and that offense is going to get going, and they're going to beat a lot of teams and frustrate a lot of teams that maybe score 80, but Ohio State will score 85 if their offense clicks.
I think you're gonna have days where you miss shots, and unfortunately for Ohio State, I think you're probably gonna lose those games because their front line looks awfully thin in terms of strength. Bradshaw and Sean Stewart, I thought they got absolutely manhandled by the big guys on Texas A&M, and they didn't get a ton of offensive rebounds, but Obaseki, C.J. Wilcher. You didn't lose the rebounding battle by that much, just 39 to 33, but sort of what Ohio State used to do to other teams last year, where they basically throw it up at the rim and let Okpara try and get it. I feel like that strategy might work against Ohio State this year. It just seemed like when they needed to get a stop, when they needed to get a rebound, they just didn't get it. And now they did get plenty of offensive rebounds themselves, but that's something to look out for. Mobley off the bench has been good. Devin Royal, 9 rebounds. I think we're starting to see how this rotation is going to turn out for Ohio State, and if you can get one more player off the bench, I think you're in a good spot. But again, that forward line, Devin Royal is 6'6", maybe 6'5". He is bigger, and he can play the four. Mahaffey can play the four too, but uh, I think you are probably one forward short if you're Ohio State there. Then in terms of Texas A&M, they're going to be in the thick of things in the SEC. This isn't a bad loss at all, but it was a really good opportunity for your second big win. And Texas A&M needed this one. They lost on opening day to UCF, and Ohio State, you beat Texas, so you get one win out of your 2 opportunities, and I think we got to be okay with that for now. All right, Joe, we'll go to Saturday here. And that Minnesota game was on Saturday, but we're going to go to the other one that was most important. Indiana takes on South Carolina. They win 87-71. Joe, like the Michigan game, this one went very similarly to what we thought it would. The Hoosiers got off to a nice start. They led by 11 at halftime, and South Carolina would bring it back to 6 or 7, and then Indiana would push it back to 12-13. The Hoosiers win this one pretty convincingly with a solid performance from a number of players.
Yeah, Sean, I think it was nice for Indiana fans to see. I know it was probably nice for you to see Miles Rice score 23 points. Limited assisting, but when a guy scores 23 points, I'm sure you could live with that. One thing that's a stark contrast between my team and a lot of teams in Indiana, they only had 11 turnovers, Sean. And so that's probably very good to see for a team that's still
and they were pushing the tempo, too. You can live with 12, 13 turnovers if you're pushing the tempo. And Indiana was, and they have 11. I think we're okay at that number.
Yeah, and Umar Ballo, I believe he shot. I know he got to the free throw line like a Bruce Thornton did a lot, but only 1 of 2 from the field. It's a very good sign to see that other guys can pick him up. Obviously, we know Malik Renew can. We've seen Mackenzie Mbako be a star of this conference for a little over a year now. But to have Miles Rice do it and to have, quite frankly, shot a pretty ineffective day for the bench and to still win comfortably against a team that's I get South Carolina's not great, but they're well coached. Lamont Paris isn't in coaching carousel rumors for nothing. So I think if you're Indiana, you chalk it up as a good win, but it's certainly nothing that Hoosier fans are going to freak out over.
Yeah, and Umar Ballo has been criticized for his effort so far in the season. And how about this? 13 rebounds and 6 blocks. And across the way from him, Colin Murray-Boyles is the best forward that he's seen this year, and is headed towards the first team all SEC, and he puts in 2 points in just 19 minutes. He's averaged over 20 a game this year and last year too, but you took away the other team's best player. You made them – I think they really started to tee off on threes, and they actually made a bunch of them early, which kept them in the game, but if Indiana's able to do that, really make the paint ineffective, I think there's a serious way to a winning defensive formula there. Back to even back to Woodson's first year, that team was pretty much good because they could stop you from scoring. To give up just 16 twos, that's a big sign. And then 8 threes. I mean, if you shoot 30 threes, you're probably going to give up 10, but I thought less poor closeouts and poor rotations like we saw last year where teams would get open threes. I don't think that was really the case here. I do think the rotation will get a little longer, especially in Atlantis. We didn't see Gabe Cupps. We didn't see Langdon Hatton. We didn't see Anthony Leal. When you play 3 games in 3 days, you're going to have to use 10 players. And especially because Trey Galloway is still, not 100% from his knee injury. I don't know if they're looking at sort of 50 to 60 minutes for those 3 games. But you made a couple shots. Nothing looked sluggish offensively. You moved the ball really nice. And another thing, Joe, is there was a large amount of Renew at the 5 in this game and Mbaka or Goody at the 4. And I feel like everybody's been asking for that for weeks. And for the first time, we've really seen them go with one big. And that was while South Carolina was kind of chasing the game, and Indiana's offense probably looked even better then. So a lot of positives to take from this one if you're Indiana. All right, up next, We have a game that was yesterday on Sunday at the Pentagon in South Dakota. St. Mary's comes from California and beats Nebraska 77-74. Despite a pretty heroic performance from Bryce Williams with 28 points, Randy Bennett and the Gales get the job done. Where are you at for Nebraska here, Joe? Obviously, this is a missed opportunity, but has their expectations really changed from the beginning of the season?
No, I don't think this was a game many Big Ten fans were shocked to see, and in general, college basketball fans. I think the fact Nebraska was in it for most of this game is a very good sign. I don't think I just frankly don't think Nebraska's a very good shot. I'm going to be honest. I think they're going to give teams problems because they're well coached. They do have talented players like a Jawan Gary. They do also have Bryce Williams. So outside of that, though, Sean, no, I think Nebraska is a team that's going to finish anywhere 12 to 18. This game did not change my mind, although it shows me they're going to be competitive in a lot of these games. And winning at the Pinnacle Bank Arena is not going to be a fun task for a lot of teams either.
Yeah, I just think there's a low ceiling for Nebraska. I mean, you've got Connor Seachin in essentially the same role that he was at Wisconsin, coming off the bench, shooting a couple threes. And now he was 2 of 6 in this game. Hoiberg is still off the bench. Gavin Griffiths isn't doing much. So you're not getting much from your bench. And really, other than Williams, Joey Blake Tunsil had 10 or 15, and Worcester had 10. But it just seems like there's not as much of a supporting cast here, even if you do consider Bryce Williams a star. I do agree. I thought this was actually a better performance from Nebraska. And St. Mary's is a good team, but St. Mary's probably doesn't finish in the top 6 or 7 in the Big Ten. They probably make the tournament. They're probably one of those last teams that do. But I thought this was a good performance from Nebraska, and unfortunately for them, that means that they're probably going to finish in the bottom half. All right, quick check on the game in Madison. Wisconsin is beating UTR GV by 3 here with 2:43 left. So let's talk about the Arizona game, and then let's go back and see if there's a definitive winner yet. All right, back to Friday. Wisconsin hosts Arizona in the Big Bad Kohl Center in Madison, Wisconsin. And Joe, there was some kind of devious magic on this one. The Badgers put up 103 points. Not even shooting all that great either. 48% from the field. They pick up a huge win over a top 10 Arizona team, 103-88. John Tanji with 41 points. And Joe, I don't think Wisconsin winning was all that shocking, but the manner that they did it was extremely surprising to me.
The fact they scored 103 points not needing overtime was significant. The fact they scored 55 points in a half was beyond me. I remember we were at a restaurant and I saw the game on the score. I saw the score on the TV. And I saw 55. I was like, huh. It's like going to commercial break, and I saw the halftime. I can't recall when Wisconsin's done that even to really bad teams, let alone a top 10 team in the country. One thing I'm going to make note of, Sean, it's not to rain on Wisconsin's parade. This was a game where this is the kind of game where North Carolina fans were reminded why they don't like Caleb Love. 2 of 13, 0 of 6 from 3. A lot of those shots were pretty mind-boggling, to be quite honest with you. He's made his fair share of those, and I don't have to rehash the memories. Everyone knows. But this was not one of them. I think the poor production from him and the very efficient production for everyone else on Wisconsin was the difference in this game. I do think the crowd brought it as well. I think back to back, I know both of those didn't go your way, but the crowd in Madison on Friday night and the crowd in Madison on Saturday night for the football game was outstanding. I think Wisconsin consistently is one of the best fan bases across all the sports, hockey, basketball, and football, and they always show why. So this is a good trend for Wisconsin. Early on in the year, they've beaten really good teams. Last year, I believe, it was Marquette. And I don't think a lot of out-of-conference teams like playing Wisconsin. In the NCAA tournament of recent, they've certainly have, like a James Madison. But early on in the season, where you're just getting to know each other and when you're just getting refamiliarized with the game, it's really not fun to play at the Kohl Center. It's really not fun to play against a team that that fouls a lot, and this was a foul fest too. That's the last point I'll make. It was not pretty, but Wisconsin doesn't ever win pretty. And 41 of 47 from the line compared to 28 of 40 from Arizona. Wisconsin does the little things right, and ultimately that's why they're always in the NCAA tournament, and that's why they usually frustrate the heck out of teams. It's why a lot of Big Ten fans hate Wisconsin outside of their biggest rival the most.
This was a different style from Wisconsin that we've seen. They jumped out to an early lead, and then in response to that, Arizona tried to just full on track meet it up and down, fire threes, fire the first shot that you get. And surprisingly, Wisconsin sort of just said, all right, we'll do that. And I don't think Arizona expected them to do that. It always felt like Arizona was going to come back. They had a couple of surges there, but Wisconsin ends up just, no, we're going to outscore you. And that's not something that Greg Gard and his team have done very often. Maybe they do that. They have a couple athletes, especially compared to recent years. But Joe, last thing I'll make here is this is the reason. This is a prime example of why the Big Ten is the way that it is. Arizona is a better team than Wisconsin. A lot of teams that are better than Wisconsin go in there and lose handily. And that's just kind of how the Big Ten is. All these other fans of other teams and other conferences, like, oh, the Kohl Center, that's not a good atmosphere. That's not that loud. There's just something about it. And nobody has really gotten a hold of it. I mean, my team hasn't won there in my lifetime. They have not won in the Kohl Center. Or maybe just after I was born. But there's this Wisconsin team, Joe, raised their ceiling a little more than I think either of us thought. And in response to that, they get themselves a ranking, 19th overall. Now, that might go away if they're not able to close the door here, but they are leading by 4 with 137 left against Rio Grande Valley. They do go down to West Virginia to play in the Greenbrier tip-off starting on Friday. So, assuming Wisconsin can finish the job here against against Rio Grande Valley, seriously good start for the Badgers.
Yeah, Sean. And one thing I'll make another note of, I can't believe we forgot to mention this, and this is mainly on me. This has not been a good theme for the Big Ten, where teams kind of like sleepwalk after a good performance. Michigan did it in the first half today against Miami, Ohio, even though they won handily. Michigan State certainly did that after a pretty impressive performance against Kansas. And they really needed Cohen Carr to go off and reignite the zone toward the tail end of that second half to pull away from Bowling Green, because they trailed by as many as 12 at the end of the first half. And they were back and forth with them up till the 5 minute mark when Cohen Carr showed why he's one of the premier athletes in this conference. So I would caution teams. I would think coaches are showing tape of that to their players to tell them, hey, the last performance doesn't matter because it could all go up in smoke in an instant. And Wisconsin, I think, is going to learn this lesson pretty soon, and maybe not in the harshest way possible, but certainly wouldn't want to be in practice tomorrow if I'm a Badger.
And that's if they win this, Joe. If they
Yeah.
lose this, everything that we just said about them picking up a big win, it's gone. I mean, Rio Grande Valley has played a couple of these good teams tight. They played Creighton tight, but still, they have to finish the job there. Other note, Oregon has their first convincing win of the year, or second convincing win of the year. They did need overtime to beat the Portland Pilots last Tuesday. They do beat Troy by 20 there. And Joe, we've got Purdue, Marquette tomorrow, Illinois, Alabama Wednesday, and then we start with some MTEs next weekend, and then starting Monday we have Maui, and then Tuesday is the Players Era Festival in Vegas. Wednesday starts the Battle for Atlantis, and then ESPN Events starts on Thanksgiving, and there is a ton of MTEs that the Big Ten teams are in. So we're not quite sure how we're going to attack that yet. Probably the bigger MTEs will get their own video, and they won't be Big Ten specific. They'll just be sort of all the teams, maybe some of the smaller ones we combine. But other than that, Joe, that is all we have for them today. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe and tune into the other content, whether it's college football or college basketball. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.